if you've just joined the meeting, I saw a couple of folks just join. We have a Mentimeter poll. Maybe Tessine, if you can drop that back in the chat. The check-in question that we're doing is what emotion describes how you feel when a funder inquires about your sustainability model as an incubator accelerator. Okay, great. Some positivity there. Work in progress. That's always good. I think it's always a work in progress, but I think we can see that there's a lot of a lot of stress, a lot of tension, fear that's coming in with developing these sustainability models and these funding streams. So that's great. Shami, we can go to the next question. And if you're still on that same Mentimeter poll, we just have a few more quick kind of checking questions that we want to get from you. We want to know where you're coming from, where in the world are you joining us from? Uganda, great. Tanzania, awesome. East Africa representing. So again, if you are just joining, please click on the Mentimeter link and you can go through all of the poll questions that are joining us, that we're sort of just checking in with. And I would say our speakers are welcome also to contribute also. So heavily Sub-Saharan Africa focused today. That's all right. I think all of our speakers are local in Kenya with me. So Shami, we can go ahead to the next one. This one is what best describes your organization. So we want to know, we just want to get a sense as to who's in the room. Are you an incubator? Are you a consultant? Are you an academic institution? I'm guessing we're going to have a lot of incubators here, but it'll be helpful to understand. So we've got a couple consultants, okay? And if you're just joining, again, we're doing a couple of Mentimeter check-in polls just to understand who's in the room. Great, okay, so a couple more incubators, an entrepreneur. Okay, great. All right, I think with that, Shami, maybe we can skip the next couple. Okay, if we have, yeah, I think that's all right. Let's leave it at that, so that we can actually jump over and dig into the conversation. So I will hand it off to Joshua for now, who is moderating our session. Joshua is with Briter Bridges, and they have done some really awesome research on ESO and hub sustainability across Sub-Saharan Africa. So I can't think of anyone better to help carry us through this conversation. So Joshua, I will hand it over to you.
Thanks, Ariel. Good morning, good afternoon from whatever part of the world that you're joining us from. As duly introduced, my name is Joshua, and I come from an organization called Briter Bridges. For those who are not familiar with Briter, we are a market intelligence provider that essentially tries to showcase, the brighter sides of these emerging markets. It's a pleasure to join you today as we, discussed a very sort of somewhat emotive, component of the support landscape, and that is funding to incubators and sustainability. And joining us on this discussion and packing some of these insights, I'll be joined by three operators, that is Esther, Ndeti, Patricia, Jumi, Wilfred, Njagi, and you'll be able to hear from them regarding their perspectives on how they've actually managed to navigate all these components of supporting founders in the ecosystem. Now, 2 or 3 years ago, we actually were privileged to embark on a study, and we surveyed more than 1,000 incubators, accelerators, and hubs across Africa. And as you all know, some of these findings might not really shock you. The reality still remains that the majority of sustainability or funding and financial resources that goes to hubs, come from donors and philanthropists. But that being said, majority of these hubs have actually not raised more than $50,000 from these donors, right? So, which leaves them in a particularly interesting situation where they have to figure out ways of staying alive and staying afloat. We found that actually 42% managed to survive from charging membership fees, right? And this includes co-working, providing co-working spaces, as well as event spaces. The rest, operated by way of just providing consulting services, either to programmatic donors on a programmatic fashion, or even to private clients. So again, joining us on this discussion and unpacking some of these models is Esther and Patricia. And maybe starting with you, Esther, if you could maybe introduce yourself, but most importantly, share with us how UnCap has managed to operate in the space, and how it generally provides value to founders in the space.
Okay. No, I was looking for the unmute button. Hi, everybody. My name is Esther. As you've heard, just confirm that you can hear me okay. Good. So yeah, my name is Esther. I currently work as investment principal at UnCap, where I lead the investment work. So UnCap is an early stage fund operating out of sub-Saharan Africa. Countries of focus are Kenya, Uganda, Rwanda, and Nigeria. We have a few investments in some outlier markets. These include Malawi, Mali, and Zambia, and we'll be expanding and scaling across more countries in the coming years. While we're not an accelerator, we do sort of like raise pipeline from accelerators and incubators from across the markets that we operate in. Why we're interesting to entrepreneurs is that we provide revenue-based financing as our financial instrument, our investment instrument. So how this works, and I don't know if this is the point where you want me to actually get to deep dive into that, but basically what we do is we provide capital in exchange for a percentage of the company's revenue until a predefined multiple of the investment is repaid. I'll just quickly say that what we found is it's interesting because we see that entrepreneurs understand this instrument and it doesn't dilute them in terms on their cap table. And then it doesn't work like traditional debt because it's basically pegged on your monthly revenues. Your repayments are pegged on your monthly revenues. And how we know businesses, particularly in this part of the world, is that there's quite a number of macro factors, sort of like that take your business up and down. So depending on the cycle, and you know that more than 60% of the businesses are sort of like based on weather cycles, for instance, right? So so how debt works is you have to pay back every month a specific fixed fee, regardless of what's happening. How RBF works is that you go up and down depending on the performance and the season of the business. And so entrepreneurs really appreciate this. It's the RBF is aligned with both our interests and all those of the entrepreneurs, and it fosters a sustainable and mutually beneficial relationship is what we have seen. There's a lot to say, but that's a quick sort of like introduction into who I am and who we are. We have a portfolio of more than 80 businesses at this time, with a couple of exits here and there. We're sector agnostic as well. But then in the next batch of investments that we're going to make, I should actually mention we do our investments in cohorts, much like how Accelerator invites the entrepreneurs in cohorts, because we're trying to do investments at scale. So what I was trying to say, that our next cohort will be very focused on climate entrepreneurs. And this is sort of like a wide angle look at climate. So both in adaptation and mitigation and, and all the adjacent sectors as well. So I hope that's a good introduction and looking forward to having this conversation for the rest of the afternoon.
Thank you, Esther. We're also looking forward to diving deeper into the model that you operate. Patricia, over to you. So, Growth Africa is not really, foreign to I guess most of us in this discussion today. But tell us a bit more about how you support entrepreneurs and how your model has actually worked for you in the past.
Great, thanks, Josh. Hi, everybody, and good afternoon, wherever you are, morning. My name is Patricia Jumi. I'm a co-founder at Growth Africa, and I hope you can all hear me loud and clear. Okay, great. So Growth Africa self-identifies as a growth frontier that supports the growth of entrepreneurship in Africa through code-based acceleration, individualized support to growth stage entrepreneurs, and also helping them get access to funding through partnership with different stakeholders in the ecosystem. We've been in existence for the last 20 years, and we are currently operating in 6 countries across Africa. So that's Kenya, Uganda, Ethiopia, Zambia, Malawi, and Ghana. And we are growing even as we continue supporting entrepreneurs across Africa. We are sector agnostic, and largely our portfolio of companies that we support will fall in the traditional sectors of agriculture, renewable energy. We're seeing circularity right now, also climate adaptation and mitigation entrepreneurs who are working in that space. It's been a journey, definitely, and having been existent for that long, you kind of have tried and tested different things. At the core has been to try and support entrepreneurs and see how they can actually grow their businesses without worrying about dilution, something that actually Esther mentioned. And so we have iterated in different phases to now settle on what we are working on. It's still a learning, we still are a work in progress because things keep changing, markets are different. What you'll offer an entrepreneur in Kenya will be different from what you'll offer them in Uganda. But by and large, we started out with a model where you participate in our acceleration programs through giving a piece of equity in the business. So we had a model that we used to call 1, 2, 3%, which was that you give us 5% equity upfront in your business. And every year, when you meet your revenue target, we give you back 1% of your equity, and then we retain the other. And the whole point was to kind of find an option that would be able to balance equity, revenue share, and then access to investment. But as we learned pretty much earlier on in the process, markets are different, risk appetite is different for entrepreneurs. So right now, our model is focused more on charging a certain percentage for entrepreneurs to participate in the accelerator, and having that largely subsidized by funding from other sources. So happy to join the conversation, especially seeing that the first emotive or emotion that everyone is feeling is anxiety, frustration. I love the work in progress. So let's see if this is going to continue being a work in progress. Yeah.
Thanks, Patricia. And what I'm hearing from both of you, Esther and Patricia, is that your model is largely entrepreneur facing, right? But at this juncture, I'd like to loop in Wilfred to also tell us a bit more about incubation as a service, right? So over to you, Wilfred.
Thank you so much. It's a pleasure being on this panel. I think this is one of those discussions where all incubators should tune in, because sustainability is a key issue among most of us. So my name is Wilfred, as you mentioned, co-founder, CEO at Villgro Africa. We are a healthcare-focused business incubator based out of Nairobi and serving the larger East Africa, and to some extent, we are also serving West Africa. So basically, Ethiopia, Tanzania, Uganda, Kenya, and Ghana. We have a much older history in India, where Villgro started 23 years ago, and we also have a Villgro in Philippines and a Villgro in the US. But each of these Villgros operate autonomously, and we've chosen healthcare for ourselves. And each of these franchisees have to figure out their own sustainability challenge. I don't wait for Villgro India to figure it out for me. I have to figure it out for myself. What we've done, we've experimented with quite a number of instruments, like some of which Patricia has mentioned, and we've been trying a few things. So we tried equity. That was the first sustainability model. And as you know, if you're just hoping for exits, you can be waiting for a long time. It will be like maybe 5, 6, 7 years. So that's much further out, and you need to pay your bills today. So we had to look at a few other options, and we ended up trying to do consultancies which luckily being a healthcare-focused incubator, naturally we saw global healthcare players gravitating towards us. The likes of Johnson & Johnson Foundation, Boehringer Ingelheim, all these large pharmaceutical companies began working closely with us, and other global development agencies, the Grand Challenges family, the USAID and others, where we started doing small consultancies with them and grew that over a period of time, right? And as that was growing, another model emerged, which was more of acceleration as a service, where someone says, I have a pot of money, I have a very particular mandate. I've been funded to run a cohort of, let's say, 15 companies in supply chain in healthcare. I don't want to set up another incubator. Can you just come take this program and run it on my behalf? So you're running everything end to end, from sourcing, putting out the call, sourcing, selecting, and technical assistance all the way up to the end. So you run it as if it was your own program, but you're running it on behalf of another partner, and that's why we're using the term acceleration as a service. That has really grown to a point where I think, as we speak, it's likely to become like 40% of all our revenues. It's really growing, because it's like you're running multiple other incubators or multiple other acceleration programs within your own hub. So I'll stop there, and happy to share more as the time goes.
And thanks, Wilfred. So maybe just starting with you, Patricia. There's some research and that has been circulated that seems to suggest that entrepreneurs, of course, find more value in programs that they sort of pay for, and such programs actually yield the best quality for these entrepreneurs. Will you then sort of agree with that? And caveat here, please don't be biased, of course. But what do you think about this sentiment?
Yeah, I've been thinking about it and what my answer is going to be around that. So definitely there's this whole discussion, and I think studies have also been done by Gideas and a couple of more organizations, that if entrepreneurs pay for a service, then definitely they will see improvement in their revenue, will see improvement in their performance. Well, I guess it's neither here or there, but definitely our experience has been, if entrepreneurs actually have skin in the game by paying a certain percentage to participate in a program, then they'll take it more seriously. They'll be more committed, and they'll also demand value from the accelerator. And I think for us, this came from the learnings where we were like, okay, we want to take a percentage of your revenue. Unlike Esther, we weren't really giving them investment. It was really like, the support we're giving you, we are translating that to connect to this value. It is worth this much. So because there wasn't an exchange of actual money, the value was perceived in a different way. So because we saw that would be a lot of back and forth, like, are you sure you actually helped me increase my revenue? Are you actually sure because of XYZ this happened, so I should be able to give you a stake in my business? We decided the easiest way then would be, let us actually charge a certain percentage so that people can pay. Definitely what the entrepreneurs are paying is highly, highly subsidized. It does not really cover the actual cost of providing support to them, but it breaks the myth that goes around that says that entrepreneurs are poor. They don't have money. One of the criteria before the entrepreneurs join our program is they have to submit their annual reports. From their annual reports, we can actually see how much revenue they're generating, and we can actually see where they make investments for things that are valuable for them. So definitely when you have skin in the game, we've seen that entrepreneurs who pay a fee will participate, will be more engaged, will be more committed, because they have actually taken something out of their pocket and paid for something. So they feel the pinch of what that is. So we've seen consistency in attendance. We've seen consistency in actually having deliverables achieved, because they know that they're actually getting value. Now, the challenge we still face is how do you actually come up with a value-based pricing where the value that you're actually giving the entrepreneur is seen in the amount of money they pay. So of course, there are two things: willingness to pay and ability to pay. If you ask me, it's kind of like a 50-50. So it's quite interesting. Before the entrepreneurs start an engagement with us, we ask them what they're expecting and how much they would be willing to pay for such a support. And they give us a value. Then after they've done, let's say, the bootcamp for the first week, it doesn't even get to the end of the first week. The first 3 days, they're like, oh my goodness, this is so valuable. I would be willing to even pay $10,000. And we're like, okay, so how would you pay that $10,000? Is it staggered? Would you take a loan? Would you take it out of your business? Have you factored it into your business? And depending on the stage of the entrepreneur, where they are in their journey and maturity of the entrepreneur, the personality of the entrepreneur, many are actually willing to pay a fee for the value that you're offering. So we charge at when the program is starting, the first 6 months. And then after we've worked and spent some time with you, there is trust that has been developed. The entrepreneur can actually see whether it's lip service, whether you're actually adding value to their business. And that then helps us then tailor make fee-based support, where, for instance, the one that we've seen, they're willing to pay whatever amount you ask them for is financial models. So because they know that's a skill that most of them don't have, it's a pain point for them, then they're willing to pay for that. So it's really been like a 50-50. And I would say that even during the COVID period, we charged to attend our programs, and entrepreneurs actually paid. So I think it's how you actually position your value and how you showcase that value, and also not really taking this myth that entrepreneurs don't have money, somebody has paid for this support, and all you have to do is convince them that what you're offering is for their benefit. So it definitely varies in countries. Kenya, it's not a struggle to get people to pay. It's not been a struggle to get entrepreneurs to pay in Ghana either. But we've had a few challenges in certain countries like Uganda, Ethiopia, and to some extent Zambia. But by and large, there is an interest. It is depending on the amount you're charging, but by and large, most are willing to pay and within the time frame that you set out for them. Yeah.
And does this actually cut across all the stages of the entrepreneurship sort of cycle? Because it looks like, looking at the ability to pay, I would think that it's mainly the entrepreneurs at the later stages who will be able to pay. What about the guys at the earliest of stages?
So say
yeah.
So early stage, definitely if people are still at ideation, incubation, their priorities are different. But also what you've seen for people who are offering like co-working space. When we used to do incubation, entrepreneurs were actually able to pay, definitely at a negotiated rate, but they were willing to pay and were able to pay. So you could see willingness and ability. But because we target entrepreneurs who have been in existence for running businesses for more than 2 years, have a minimum of $50,000 in revenue, then definitely they have some sort of capacity to pay for these services. So that is not necessarily a challenge, but it's also how you frame it and how consistent you'll be in your wording. Because their payment does not guarantee them investment. Their payment is actually commitment to see that they are willing to put money aside to improve their skill and to grow their business. So when you differentiate those two, you also manage the whole expectation of, but I paid and you didn't connect me to an investor. So those are two different things. And I think it really comes from really articulating what does this fee entail and being transparent and actually saying, it's going to cost me XYZ to support you. Somebody else is footing this bill, but I need you to foot this bill because it will pay for me to come to your premises. It will pay for me to make phone calls to you. It doesn't cover my salary. It doesn't cover my other overheads, but this is actually what it's covering. So that is it. And then the last thing I would want to add to that, it also depends on your team. They believe they have in charging. The market is so distorted in a way that you kind of feel guilty, like, why am I charging when someone is already paying for this service? But I think it's just that belief in how you articulate it. Now, I think there is a difference in sectors. If you're looking at the tech sector, I think charging a fee for a service for entrepreneurs in the tech sector would be a totally different ballgame. And I don't necessarily think one would be very successful there, because the options of providing support and exchange for those services are a bit different and well known in the market. So I think where it works best is with small growing businesses that are in, so to speak, traditional sector, your everyday businesses that are generating revenue in a very easy and well-defined way. Yeah.
Thanks for that, Patricia. Joshua was sitting outside, and I think his laptop overheated from what he just messaged me. So I'll try and help out. And no, thank you for that very much, Patricia. So I want us to switch gears a little bit. So for those of you who have joined recently, we know there's a lot of tension and stress that goes on with looking at sustainability models. And what we really wanted to do in this next segment is I'm going to give each of the speakers a few minutes to share about a specific revenue stream that they've really articulated and worked on. I think we've heard from each of them that this has been a journey and a learning journey at that over the years, and really refining some of these sustainability and revenue streams. So I will I'll hand it over to Wilfred. So Wilfred will talk to us about consulting as a service. He's mentioned, he introduced this briefly in his opening remarks, but Wilfred, let's get into a little bit more detail. Can you shared how you arrived there, but I think what would be really helpful for the folks on this call is to understand more nuance of how it works, how you've approached it, maybe how you price it. So I will hand it back to you. And if anyone in the audience has questions, we have time for a couple of questions after each of kind of these deep dives, but we also have time for questions at the end. So if you have questions, please feel free to put them in the chat. And Wilfred, if there's anything, I'll bring it to your attention. But yeah, over to you, Wilfred.
Thanks. I'll start with the money first and just give some estimates. For this acceleration as a service, we get paid about anywhere between $150,000 to $200,000 for a single assignment, right? So if you do 3-4 such assignments, you could be covering a good base of your annual OPEX. But how do you arrive there? I think how you arrive there is, first of all, finding your area of specialization. It can be sector-wise kind of specialization, let's say healthcare or agri or fintech or climate, now that climate is a big topic, but then build skills and specialize in that area that you become better than everyone else, right? That means you have the domain industry knowledge, you understand it through and through compared to others, right? So that will give you the first edge. Once you have that specialization and technical expertise, you package that now to these other for example, how it happened for us is that since we are known for healthcare, most players in the global health, coming from the global north, most of them came to a conclusion that it's more costly for us to try to hire a team in Africa, rent an office, and try to run a program. Yet maybe they're doing it, maybe it's a 1-year program, right? Let's say now, coming out of the COP24 climate, COP24 summit, someone gets inspired to do something in East Africa around climate, right? And this is a player, let's say in Norway, or they are based out of somewhere else out of the continent. If they are doing it just for 1 year, it defeats the purpose to try to hire a country manager, get an office, do all that. If I was them, it becomes almost natural that you want to go to people who have been doing that for a while. If I'm such a funder, I would go to KCIC, for example, because we know them for climate change, and say, hey, I have this program, can you run it on my behalf? So I think if people know that you have specialization in certain areas, then you're likely they are likely to come and try to partner with you. Initially, it can be the traditional consultancy model. I think even for us, it started as a traditional consultancy model before we package it differently as an acceleration as a service, right? And those two are different because in a consultancy, you're working hand in hand. They're giving you deliverables and tasks, you're delivering and invoicing. While in acceleration as a service, you're being given the full budget. Here's the money for TA, here's the money for seed funding, here's the money for you administer if there's any seed funding, you're the one to administer it. If you need to hire more people, so you have a much more leeway in structuring this acceleration as a service. I gave areas of specialization like sectors. It can also be other areas of specialization like AI, for example, or tech, or financial aspect, or it can be which other area of specialization? It can be supply chain. So it can also be based on the either sectors or based on the value chain and where you want to play in that value chain. So I think it's up to you to figure out what do you do better than everyone else. I think everyone must have at least one thing that you know is your strong suit. And then with that strong suit, that superpower is what you try to package, and it has to be a win-win for both parties, right? Yeah. So I think that's the summary of it, and happy to take more questions.
Thank you, Wilfred, and thank you, Ariel, for holding the fort. Sorry, guys, I fried my laptop, so I had to find some shade. But I think it's at this point that we might want to take some questions from everyone in the room to Wilfred. But I guess, maybe if you can tell us, I mean, you are offering this incubation as a service to entrepreneurs, but someone is paying for it. So is it a case of you who pays the piper calls the tune? What if you don't agree with some of the approaches that have been outlined there? What do you do? Is there any flexibility? How do you manage such scenarios?
It's a very good question. I think in all of these, there has been a co-creation phase where they come with their approach and we know what works. We've done it in Africa for long enough. We would want to be honest with them early enough to say, this works or this doesn't work, and let's create something together, right? So that co-creation helps to make sure that, because at the end of the day, it's not about the money. At the end of the day, you want to really make an impact on the entrepreneur. One of the programs we ran was called I3. It was a call for supply chain innovations. And even after we delivered the assignment, long after the end of the program, we've continued to keep touch with some of those entrepreneurs, just because for us, first of all, we come from a place where we are already paid to do this. We would be, whether you hired us or not, we would still be in the business of working with entrepreneurs. That's our core mission. So we tend to also go over and above, and most clients are surprised because even long after you've paid us, if an entrepreneur we worked with needs an introduction, or they need to know which event to attend, we are happy to continue doing that. The other thing is that sometimes, because we are so sector focused, we find that sometimes it's the same entrepreneur who had been in our main core program. Now we get hired to work with him in in another program, or after they've already graduated from a program, they meet the mandate of this funder, right? Remember, the mandate is not ours. So we will not say, no, we've already worked with that guy, leave him alone. That's not the case because it's not our mandate. So we'll still work with previous entrepreneurs if they meet the mandate of the funder. So it really is, it comes together really nicely because yeah, you're serving the same people, you're using the same networks, and it's the same ecosystem. So it works quite well.
Thank you. So the sense that I get from this is that you are actually the experts here, that you're both an advisor to the entrepreneur and to the funder themselves as well, right? So that should actually put you in a good position to advise both in case of any interesting approaches that are being forced down on you. So there is a question in the chat, and it's sort of a comparison between the model where entrepreneurs pay for the services and as well as the incubation as a service. So do you perhaps find yourself in situations where sometimes you actually have to also charge for the services that you're offering as part of this incubation as a service?
Sometimes we charge not in the incubation of a service. In the incubation as a service, there's a partner, a funder, or someone else who has already paid, right? So the entrepreneur, this is afforded to the entrepreneur at no cost. But outside acceleration as a service, we've been engaged by other entrepreneurs, not even in our core program, who want to pay for our services. For example, a company comes to us, they are way advanced for our stage because we are early stage, yet they need our services. They need to go to market strategy. They need help with market scoping. We've had cases where entrepreneurs have paid us, not in any program, but out of their own right. Coming to us as Josh and saying, I know what Villgro has done. I'm in healthcare. I've outgrown incubation. I don't want to do that kind of support, but I have specific requests which I'm willing to spend money on. So that has also happened, I think, almost 4 or 5 times. And they tend to actually pay well. So I agree with Patricia that entrepreneurs are not they are not poor. I mean, some of them can afford, especially if they are already doing well, and our service will help them even do better, right? So the same way they would have paid a consultant, you find that entrepreneurs are willing to pay an incubator.
Thank you, Wilfred. Now, Esther, I mean, revenue-based sort of financing is a support model, right? But I would think that this whole process of implementing this model is somewhat expensive because you have to select these entrepreneurs, you have to sort of conduct due diligence. It looks like you are actually investing in the entrepreneur and supporting them as well. So, I mean, what has been your experience really with this, and have you also been able to sort of subsidize some of your costs in implementing this model?
Oh, yeah, interesting question. Thank you for that. I mean, the whole thesis around how UnCap invests basically is we're doing investments at scale, and the only way to achieve scale is to be able to bring down our cost of doing deals. And what we've done essentially is we are disrupting the investment space. I'm laughing because essentially we work in a space that is looking to invest in innovations. But if you look at the industry itself, it's really rigid in terms of adopting innovation within the investment industry. So, we're still doing the 2 and 20 funds. We're still doing the sort of like, due diligence in a certain way and all of that, right? But then here comes UnCap, who is like, listen, we're trying to put that first ticket into businesses, growing businesses across Africa. And we're trying to do into many of them, and how are we going to do that and be able to keep our costs low? So what we've done is multiple things, but they're all geared in one direction. So one of the things is that we have a platform, the UnCap platform. Basically, this is where all applications are done. We are not doing pitch decks and standing on platforms and evaluating people's presentations, which is okay for a specific type of investor. But for us, no. I mean, put your business, financials, put your fundamentals down on paper, into the platform. We have things that we've been able to build to the platform that also, digitize the process. We have algorithms that also select out businesses that don't fit our model. So we've adopted all these, tools that are being adopted across the world, and especially in the tech industry, to be able to really enable our investment process. And that's how we're able to do multiple investments at a go. I mean, we have applications. I mean, last year's applications, I think we were looking through 10,000 applications, right? From very many countries. So this platform of ours really helps us be able to quickly go through them. And then now we do our due diligence from, within the team, and still use our platform to be able to enable that process. Once we've invested, this platform is still where we assign dashboards to each of our investees, and they do their reporting and everything through there. We have APIs integrated to multiple tools that help us with AML and various KYC checks, but also it's integrated into their digital accounting tools, because we're not going to be able to go into multiple financial statements and management accounts if we don't have them sort of like in one home that help, we're able to sort of like quickly see the performance, particularly around the revenues for the businesses that we're invested in. So UnCap is sort of more like cutting edge, trying to disrupt the, early stage financing ecosystem. And one of the things that we do is we admit that we cannot do these things on our own. For instance, once we've invested, I mean, everybody knows early stage entrepreneurs basically need some post-investment support. We're not going to pretend we're the ones to do that. So on our platform still, we have links and integrations with various partners across Africa, business support providers, consultants, and we are able to link the businesses with the appropriate service provider out there to be able to help them grow. Like I mentioned earlier, we also work with incubators, accelerators to build our pipeline. Because again, we know that this is where these entrepreneurs are found. We also use, chambers of commerces, because we're not trying to stay within bubbles as well. We use various sort of like leads and sources of, pools of entrepreneurs to be able to really grow our pipeline. I hope I have answered your question, but that being said, I'm going to answer a question you haven't asked, right? And sorry about that. I hope we're not pressed for time, Ariel. Because as Wilfred was speaking, and as Patricia was speaking, I mean, one of the things you need to realize is I have been in this ecosystem for a while. I started off as an entrepreneur. I'm a recovering entrepreneur. I have a lot of respect for people who are building and growing businesses across Africa. I tried twice. I burned my fingers all the way to the bone. And I have a lot of respect for entrepreneurs. But one of the things, and I moved from there, was, from entrepreneurship, I moved into Andy, where I was working with intermediaries such as North Africa, right? Patricia and I know each other for many years, and Wilfred and everybody else really, and Ariel with her previous hat, right? And then I moved on to EABC. So I've been able to sort of like have a lens across multiple lenses into the ecosystem over the past more than a decade now. What I loved this conversation, I felt a bit out of place initially. I was like, I'm not an accelerator, I'm not an incubator. What am I coming to say here? Is, one of the things I've had a chance to work with, accelerators, incubators. I was in the very first management board for ASEC, the Association of Startups and SME Enablers in Kenya. Is when you're looking at sustainability or funding efforts of accelerators and incubators and ESOs across Africa, is it's a double-sided coin, and really I find that a lot of the issues they face, it's not really driven by the ESOs themselves, but by the environment that they operate in. So one side of the coin, we see that, and I'm just throwing a span in the works and sort of like happy to sort of like hear your thoughts. One side of the coin is that you have these ESOs who are trying to drive this growth of SMEs, growth of startups, and giving all these supports and advisory services in the market. But the funds, where they plug their funds from, the donors and the funders, there are some pre-designed objectives of and programs of what should be happening. which might differ with what these program designers, or rather the ESOs themselves, are trying to achieve on the ground. So sometimes you find there's a disconnect. And you just basically, what I've seen with some, I wouldn't say all, some ESOs and accelerators is, I mean, at the end of the day, you need to keep your business running. So you'll end up doing program after program that has been designed by some international agency somewhere that is, I mean, somewhat adjacent to what you're trying to do, but not completely what is aligned with what you're trying to actually achieve. And so you find them skirting round and round for a while and, you know, not being entirely effective. So some of the things that I wrote as Wilfred was talking here was that I think this is where there's a role for industry associations, and I would love to see a lot more conversation and action being driven by yourselves, Ariel, at Pollinate Impact, but also, you know, ASEC and Countrywide Hubs and all of these guys, because surely at the drawing table, we should have more of Wilfreds and Patricias and whoever, such that by the time capital is being unleashed into markets, it's tailored in the right way, not for people to be doing random obscure projects out there. The other thing I wrote that would be good to see is if these if ESOs or, you know, accelerators would hire in fundraising experts, because what I've seen in most of these organizations is the person who's in charge of the training is a person who's also fundraising, is also the person who's hiring people, who's also the person who's traveling to open up new you know, new branches, or, you know, expand their program. It's not possible. You need to get some person who can actually lead that. Or if you could create, I don't know, you know how in BC we have a pool of CFOs who come into the businesses when needed. So I don't know, maybe that's what we need, but there definitely needs to be a lot more intention. And then lastly is sort of like maybe start seeing a lot of these, you know, growth Africas and the rest actually setting up funds of their own. And it doesn't have to be big, massive funds. It could be something, it could even start as a loan mechanism of sorts, because they really know the businesses that they're working with. And they are the best placed, I think. If you think about it, if you look at Y Combinator and these other accelerators across the world, why they're so successful is because they have a fund and they already know their businesses so well. And it makes so much sense for them to be the ones to sort of like be the first ticket into these businesses. So if we could see some more efforts towards that, again, like I said, this is not the ESO's fault. This could be driven by, you know, funders and donors out there to be able to ensure sort of like the growth of the ecosystem. So that was one side of the coin, and now I'm going to talk really fast because I know my time definitely is running out. The other side of the coin was really, if you look at on the VC investor side of things, there have been conversations about, you know, we don't actually get pipeline from accelerators or incubators. Those things have been said. I say things out openly, I don't hide. So, you know, I think this is not necessarily true. I think there's truth to it, and I think it's not necessarily true. So clearly there needs to be a clarification. What we need to start seeing is more data and more proof points, like, no, actually all these investments that have been made over the past, and probably Josh, this is something you could help with Briter as well. You know, these investments actually went through, you know, accelerators and were able to raise X amount and blah, blah, blah. And then through this program and blah, you know, whatever it is, a proper understanding of how the capital flows and where interventions have come in, because I think people say abstract things out here and it doesn't actually support the efforts of accelerators and incubators in this market. And then the other thing, and something that UnCap does, is when we're looking for pipeline, like I mentioned earlier, is we give attributable links to each of the accelerators or whoever that we work with, so that when we make an investment, we come back and say, this investment came directly from you guys. You supported this. I mean, sometimes it might be a bit skewed in case they found some information online, whatever it is, but we've seen that it really helps when they go back to their own partners and their own investors or funders and say, look, our program actually works. And this is sort of like the output of this, right? The outcome of this. So I think if more people did that, if you're sort of like actively working with accelerators and and incubators, it would be really helpful for them to provide evidence of, you know, the work that they're doing out there. Again, I think also there's work for industry associations and research programs such as yourselves, Josh. And now I rest my case. Thanks.
And thanks so much, Esther. I think there's so much there to be unpacked. And what I hear most is that all facets of the ecosystem, the community need to do their job, be it researchers, be it the donors themselves and financiers, as well as the the support implementers as well. But maybe just going back to you, Patricia, with I guess what you said earlier on regarding having a flexible pricing model on the fees charged to entrepreneurs for the support. Now, how do you actually do this, right? I guess what are some of the factors that really come to mind when you price sort of the fee that you charge to an entrepreneur? Is it based on either the stage, the market? I remember you saying that some markets are somewhat tough to get entrepreneurs to pay for services, and I understand that you also look at the financials. So is it based on a multiple of? Yeah, tell us about it.
Great, thanks. And thanks, Josh, for that question. Thanks, Esther, for opening up that box. So one thing, disclaimer, you are not going to be sustainable from fees that you charge entrepreneurs. It has to be a multiple streams of revenue. So the same way we tell our entrepreneurs that their business model has to be articulate and they need to have clear revenue streams, it's the same way we have to think as accelerators and incubators or anybody who is providing services to the entrepreneurs. So for us, and I think just generally, if I speak for everybody in the room, it all starts with selection, right? Do you have the right entrepreneur in your space? Because if you get the wrong entrepreneur, then you're going to have the usual suspects. I'm only here for exposure, to get money, to hop from this program to another. So you need to get people who are really fed up with where they are currently in their journey and actually need somebody to help them and are risk takers, because we always say entrepreneurs are risk takers, but if you're not even able to pay $500 or $1,000, then definitely you're not a risk taker. So those are some of the things we look at, like selection. Who are you bringing in? What is their need? Where are they in their journey? How do they value support? How do they value growth? So it's a combination of really maturity of the entrepreneur. I wouldn't really say sector per se, because we run sector-based programs. Payment has to happen before you join the program, so before the first workshop. In cases where in other countries that is a challenge, then those 2 installment payments. So our charges have typically been $500 or $1,000. Like I said, it's not going to make you rich. It's not going to really put a dent, so to speak, in what you're doing, but it's some of the stuff that we do. Definitely, we also do acceleration as a service and a lot of all those other revenue streams that have been talked about. I think the key thing here is, and what makes it exciting to have this conversation, and just looking at the report you shared, and also what Ndeti is standing for, I guess it comes to what Esther is also pointing out, that there has to be a clarity in terms of who is doing what, in terms of stakeholders, and having that one voice that can actually have this courageous conversation to talk about, okay, what does sustainability look like? For a very long time, incubators and accelerators have kind of felt guilty to offer accelerator as a service because you've kind of maybe felt you're going away from your core. But really, when you go back to the ethos of what you stand for, you are trying to support entrepreneurs. So I always tell accelerators or incubator, take an acceleration as a service job if it's actually helping you achieve your vision or help you achieve your mission. If it's not, then leave it. Because at the end of the day, the impact is how many entrepreneurs have you supported to great jobs, to provide products and services that are much needed in the market. Yes, there is that distortion that is coming from donors and funders in the market who already have a perceived agenda in terms of what they want to achieve. But I guess it also comes with the experience that sometimes you're able to walk away and just say, this is going to take me far away from my vision and mission. I'm going to let it be. I'm going to let somebody else do it, or I'll be part of a consortium, let somebody who that is important to take the lead, and then I can come in as a partner to that. But I guess the conversation we need to really have is, how do we become sustainable? What models are working? What is the right mix to have? And then partnerships, because I think we as accelerators and incubator are still afraid to talk about working together and agreeing. I mean, like coming back to what Wilfred was saying and Esther, we know we want to focus with this category of entrepreneurs and in this continuum of acceleration support. But sometimes we want to do everything, we want to apply for everything that's out there. And so that becomes more like being pulled in different directions. And what then happens is quality is affected. Definitely the story of there's no pipeline, it's tiring. I mean, come on, 20 years, we're still talking about the same thing, like, come on, guys. So pollinate, we need to have this discussion. We are tired of hearing that there is not good quality pipeline, then do something about it. But now the challenge is even industry associations are also going into providing support to entrepreneurs, acceleration, and all that. So there's totally confusion in this ecosystem. We need to kind of clarify who plays what role and then see how people can be supported to play those roles. But I think definitely that is the challenge. Funding is a challenge. We need fundraising experts. We tell it to entrepreneurs that you need to have a dedicated person who is doing this. We're not doing it. But I think it's actually I'm looking forward in the next 5 years to see maybe like 3 or 5 models that will come out from accelerators or incubators in Africa that are defined, that these are the different types of models and sustainability models that are working, and seeing how actually those ones grow, because it seems like everybody has gone through, try this, it's not working, let's go to the next one, let's try this, let's do everything. So you don't really have like case studies where you're saying like, this is actually the medicine to this solution. So yeah, looking forward to continuing this conversation, but I would just say you need to really know what value you're presenting, defining what value is. Entrepreneurs will pay if they can see you're adding value, and it's all relational. So if everything is very transactional, I'm doing this from A to Z, someone has paid me or I have a time limit, then it's not relational. And so you cannot really create new revenue streams or products that can earn you more money, because we also have to test the theory. Are we adding value? Can the success of these entrepreneurs be attributed to our support? And if it can't, if entrepreneurs cannot clearly attribute value to our services, then we'll continuously have this sustainability challenge. Yeah.
Thank you, Patricia. So everyone, in case you have any questions, feel free to either drop them in the chat box or even raise your hand, and this will be unmuted. But maybe just coming back to you, Patricia, and talking about scale of support services. I understand that Growth Africa not only operates in Kenya, but also in other markets, including Ghana. What are some of the considerations that come to your mind when scale of services is sort of concerned? Keeping in mind that there are more than 1,000 supporters in the continent, right? So how do you then get to spread out your wings and support more entrepreneurs across the continent? Are there any specific considerations, factors that come into mind, be it, different cultures, strength of markets and maturity of ecosystems as well?
Yeah, definitely different cultures, ecosystem strength and all that. But I think because we're thinking in terms of the strategy we've created, we very much earlier on decided that when we are going into new markets, we need to test our model and see if that model can actually work in the next market. So for instance, with Ghana, from the word go, the feedback was like, no, you can't charge, no one will apply, blah, blah, blah. We were like, we're going to charge. Let's see how many people pay. We're going to charge. And we did charge and they paid. Did they pay? Did 90% pay upfront? No. But did we get 100% payment within the duration we needed? Yes. The market that has still proven difficult for us definitely is Ethiopia, because how are you charging? How are you quantifying it? It's a bit a distorted market in terms of what you can charge for. But I can actually say that it's about your strategy as an organization and you testing out your model. Because if each time it's a cultural issue and ecosystem issue, then you find you're doing different pockets of intervention for different markets. And what we're trying to do is create a Pan-African organization where different entrepreneurs from different parts of Africa are feeding off from their peers and learning from their peers and growing with their peers. So that we've been adamant about that because we've realized that if we try to create a Ghana program, a Kenya program, then the whole point of even growth, the name Growth Africa, doesn't really work for us. So we are testing that. We've had challenges, yes, and pushback, but I would say really entrepreneurs across the region are the same pushback, same issues, but when they see value, I'll still bring it back to value, they're willing to pay. Definitely you'll test whether they'll pay the same amount as Kenyan entrepreneurs, but the fact is they will still pay an amount. And for us, it's really proving, can we then come back and do a paper and say, all across the different markets we have in Africa, entrepreneurs are willing to pay something, and this is what they consider that valuable amount to get a support or services from an accelerator like ours. Yeah, so I wouldn't say culture has played a big role in this. Yeah.
Thanks, Patricia. And maybe, Wilfred, just bring you to this conversation. I understand that sometimes last year you launched the Villgro Africa brand, moving out from Villgro Kenya, right? So with this, Pan-African view of say incubation as a service, what are some of the, perspectives that you have been able to learn so far with regards to, scaling up, support across the continent?
Yeah, thanks, Josh. It feels like last year, but it's actually 3 years since we rebranded. It was 2020. I also feel like last year, but time has flown by. I think what we've learned as we try to scale to, especially West Africa, there are some markets that we are very keen on, Francophone, especially, and trying to enter countries like Senegal and others to see, because if we talk about sustainability challenges in Anglophone, trust me, when you go to Francophone, then that's where those are the ones that, those are the ecosystems that bear the blunt in terms of sustainability, because first of all, a lot of donor funding is coming to Anglophone, and the Francophone people are being left out. It's now recently that conversation has begun. So I think for us to expand outside East Africa, one thing we wanted to do was capacitate and work with other incubators in those countries. We are not going to try to open another Villgro in Ghana or in Senegal or in DRC, but we would rather identify which hub is already doing a good work there. Maybe they are a sector agnostic hub, and then we come and help them maybe do a healthcare focused program, right? And before we expanded, we actually trained about a dozen incubators across maybe 7 countries. And after we had trained them, then we went on to do a pilot with Ghana Tech Lab, which was one of the ones that we had trained. And that has been our, we come from a place of open innovation, because the pie is large for all of us. And I think that's a discussion we had with Patricia when we were launching in Kenya 8 years ago. We were like, ecosystem is so huge. If you compare to other mature ecosystems, you think that we have enough hubs, but when you do the numbers, we're actually underserved. So from that place of open innovation, we want to identify other hubs in other countries that are doing good work, build their capacity so that they can also run healthcare programs, hopefully link them up with the same funders that have funded us. So we want to spread, as they say, the more the merrier. We want to spread. We don't want to keep it to ourselves. For example, if J&J says, I want to do a similar program that I've done in East Africa, I want to do it in North Africa or in West Africa, we'll be the first ones to introduce them with the right hub, the right incubator in those countries, and just build their capacity and help them grow. So our joy especially for me, my joy is to see more hubs thriving outside the usual pockets of, there's Kenya and a lot of East Africa, and there's Egypt and South Africa and Nigeria. But we are a continent of 54 countries. So what happens to the other 50 plus? So, and we can't be able to effectively do the work we do here in all the countries by ourselves. So we need to reach out, and that's why this conversation is important, to reach out and help and strengthen other hubs in other countries. Something that AfriLabs is doing very well with their capacity building programs. So that kind of work, I think, is what is needed as you scale across the continent. I think you have to go back to the why. Why are we doing this, right? It's not just to build a name for ourselves, but it's actually we want to. That's why we are a network of social impact incubators. We are coming in to solve some social problems around food security, hunger, healthcare, education. Every time a mother dies in another country giving birth, be it Liberia or whichever country, that mother is equal to a Kenyan mother. So we shouldn't, when we say mothers shouldn't die giving birth in Kenya, the same should be echoed across 54 countries. So who else can help us do that work in those countries that we are not operating? Yeah, that's how we view our scaling approach.
No, thank you. And maybe just final thoughts regarding the incubation service. From my limited knowledge, of course, they're sort of designing the premise that a majority of the entrepreneurs may not really be able to pay for the service, right? So someone is essentially paying for that program. Now, I think there's a question in the chat that essentially asks that does this actually now sort of distort the market? Are these funders, distorting the market? What are your thoughts regarding that?
That's a very good question. Whether so the way maybe I need to clarify. This funder is not paying for a service that the entrepreneur was gonna pay for. That's not what you're talking about. They are not coming in to subsidize the entrepreneur. That's not it. What they're doing is they want to run a program in the continent, and they do the math and they say, if we hire a country director, we spend $100,000 doing that, and maybe 2 other staff members, maybe 200K gone, and then get an office and all those things. By the time you hit the ground running, $500,000 is gone, and you haven't touched even a single entrepreneur. What we are saying is we can be more economical. Instead of duplicating efforts, we are lending you our capacity, even at a subsidized rate. So your 500K stretches even further, right? So we offer you this turnkey solution where you tell us, this is a program I want to run, this is the goals and outcomes, and this is the budget. So run the program on my behalf. That's what we mean by acceleration as a service. We're not talking about a donor subsidizing entrepreneurs. No, yeah.
No, thanks for that clarification. And maybe Esther, do you think that we're speaking into the wind? Is this much ado about nothing? Do you ever even think that ESO services or is it possible for impact incubators to be ever self-sustainable? Can this really be achieved?
So you're talking to a hopeless optimist. So the answer is no. I don't think you're speaking to the wind. I mean, and that's the bare fact that most of these organizations, especially the older ones, are still at it and are still talking. I mean, you've just heard Patricia saying we're still working on it. We're still experimenting. We're still, it just shows that one is they understand their why. They know that there's a need in the market, and they're working either alone, hopefully with other people and possibly with the support of Pollinate Impact. I sound like I was paid to plug Pollinate Impact, but I mean, you know, I feel like that's a role of these organizations, right? To sort of like help really define and figure out the way forward. The beauty is that, or the beauty and the conundrum is that, you know, Africa is never going to have the same exact models like other parts of the world. Hopefully we figure out how to take the best of what works elsewhere and then tweak it for us here. So I think it's still going to be a touch and go for a while. What I'm enjoying is the fact that the conversation is happening. How do we get sustainable? How do we stay sustainable? What's working with you know, Villgro Africa, and what can we take from that? What can we not take from that? The other thing, also to touch on your earlier question, that I'm excited about is I have actually heard funders and donors in conversations going like, well, I think the past 5 years we kind of screwed up. Well, they didn't say exactly that, not so few words, right? But you know, I've talked to some development agencies where they're like, okay, this was the intention, but the intention remains. However, possibly the mechanism or the tool or just how they, you know, worked with different organizations on the ground was probably not the right way. And for them to be able to also have that sort of like internal reflection, I think is really, really good, right? And then I come back to and it only happens when there's pushback and there's continuous conversations in, you know, conferences and publications and data showing this and that. So the more we do that, the more they can be able to also hear it from other sides, but also internally reflect. So I don't know, maybe I'm the wrong person to ask me. I'm a hopeful, continuous optimist. So yeah.
Thanks, Esther. Patricia, are you the pessimist? What do you think about, you know,
Yes,
this overall
I'm
goal
happy
around
that
sustainability?
Esther is optimistic on our behalf, Wilfred. I think it's, yeah, you need some level of, I don't know. Yes, but I think, like Esther says, if it doesn't come from us, where will it come from, right? I always feel like if you're supporting entrepreneurs, you're working in an accelerator. Wilfred told you we met 8 years ago. I know Esther. It's like a teacher, right? You're always just that kindergarten teacher. Like, it's like a calling. So you will keep at it until you just find that solution, because we know we are not even at 2% of where we should be to support entrepreneurs to achieve what they can in Africa. So we have to be at it. It's a life calling. So we'll come and vent over here and then go back and go do the grind and then come back again. So these sessions are nice because you kind of like feel you're not alone, and yeah, there's much we can do together.
No, thanks. And Wilfred, what are your hopes regarding this though? Like, are you even hopeful that, you know, probably find the moment where, you know, impact incubators will ever be sustainable?
There's reason to be hopeful. But remember, even until recently, Y Combinator still used to get some grants until I think 3-4 years ago. But even the most successful incubators have had a bit of grants here and there before they got their own sustainability figured out, right? So it's understood, and I think what's important is making gradual steps. 5 years ago, if you would have asked me, I would have given you a very different answer, because 5 years ago, our non-grant funding was only 5%, and I couldn't see how this could ever grow. Today, it's actually seeming like, especially this year, our non-grant funding will surpass our donor funding, which is like, can you imagine moving from where we were stuck at 5%, and that seemed like a miracle, and now all of a sudden, we've broken through to a place where we think we are going to be very non-donor dependent. So I think it's doable. We just need to make gradual steps. We also need to share with others what is working. Remember, sustainability, if Growth Africa and Villgro are sustainable, What about the rest? Sustainability is not sustainability until the entire ecosystem has figured out a model to be self-sustaining. I've seen on the chat, Patricia talked about endowment funds. I think we can do what other countries have done also. I think there was a policy when I was in India that year, 2013, they enacted a policy where 2% of all CSR funding, all corporate social responsibility donations, 2% was earmarked for incubation. Can you imagine? At the country level, it was a policy. So that unlocked a lot of local funding for incubators. I think we also need policy. We need government also. Even as we are talking sustainability, we need government also to meet us halfway. Because some of the problems we're trying to solve, or some of the problems that the entrepreneurs are trying to solve, are problems that the government should have solved. The issues to do with the education, water and sanitation, all these things, we are helping the government in its mandate, so therefore they should be able to fund our work or fund the startups we work with. I think we need to bring all these other players and look at it from a systemic point of view. And there have been some attempts with World Bank and other players, but I think more can be done. More can be done to make sure that we're not just talking to ourselves. There has to be the triple helix where private sector is involved, CSR is involved, government is involved, academia is involved. All these players have to be involved in that discussion.
Thank you. And I believe this is just but a start to the overall discussion. I mean, it's been a lovely start, regardless, this afternoon. And thanks to Esther, Patricia, Wilfred for your perspectives, sharing your best practices and experiences. So yeah, I mean, handing it over to Ariel.
Thank you so much, Joshua, and thank you, Patricia, Wilfred, Esther. Indeed, this is really just the start. I think we know there's this tension around sustainability, and there's much more that needs to be done, not only from us individually, but at an ecosystem level for sure. And really excited about how Pollinate Impact can be that kind of common platform to have these honest conversations and create a unified voice and perspective to be shared with, whether it's government, politicians, whether it's funders and donors and things like that, to really make sure that we're moving in the right direction. And that if we did, make some mistakes, and Esther, I was really happy to hear that you've heard that from donors, that we learn from those and we can move forward so that we can get beyond that. Oh yeah, Esther. Yes. One. You're saying one funder. One is better than none. So at least that's progress. But that's a conversation that needs to happen, and it needs to come from not just Patricia saying it, or not just Wilfred saying it, or not just Joshua and Esther or myself saying it, but from a unified perspective. So thank you all. I think Jumi has a quick poll that we want to push out, because we do want to continue not just this conversation, but all of the conversations we've been having last week. There's a number of conversations that are happening the rest of this week. There's one following later this afternoon. This was all about the money. The one this afternoon is about how to add value beyond just money, and how to get that value from your funders and your donors. But we really want to know what you're interested in engaging with us on, and particularly, especially for this session, whether this is something that you want to continue taking up, and this is a conversation that you're willing to continue, because I think we're really just scraping the surface around sustainability and all of these things around charging and different revenue streams. And I can't remember who said it, but what can we learn that has worked elsewhere that we can modify? I think, Esther, that was you. What can we take from elsewhere that can work? The India example, for instance, I think there's a lot to be learned and shared across markets, and that's exactly what we're hoping to do. So we look forward to engaging with you, not just after this potluck, but we're just getting started. So we have a ton of things that we'll be launching our calendar of events shortly, and we'll invite all of you to continue these conversations as we go. I would ask, we have a quick video that we just wanted to share about the journey of Pollinate Impact. So I think my colleague Tassin will pull that up and share it out with you. But I just want to give a huge, huge thanks again to our speakers. You guys were phenomenal. I hope, or thank you again to our participants. Also, I hope you guys got a lot out of it. And we look forward to hosting you at the next few sessions. And thank you, Joshua, for brilliant moderation despite overheating laptop in the sun. So thank you for pushing through with us. Tassin, I'll hand it off to you, the video.
It is estimated that more than 7,500 incubators and over 3,000 accelerators operate globally. Social impact incubators play a vital role in supporting and nurturing social enterprises. However, incubators struggle to gain visibility or the credibility needed to access consistent funding, and the incubation industry has yet to achieve recognition as a fully established industry.
We often face the same challenges related to things like strategic growth, team management, financial sustainability, etc.
Impact incubators lack a space in which they can promote a shared understanding of best practices in their work.
Two of the challenges that I think are really important for incubators to try to overcome are staffing and related to funding.
To understand the incubation industry better and to arrive at the best possible solution, we interviewed more than 50 social impact leaders from around the world, including entrepreneurs, incubators, accelerators, funders, investors, and researchers, and here's what they had to say.
By creating a network where knowledge sharing is open, where there's an openness to understand from each other's mistakes and successes.
And there's something so supportive about having this kind of community that can enable you to troubleshoot these issues, and that really helps you to focus more on this impact piece alongside the incubation that we're doing.
By bringing together the stakeholders in this network, we hope to create a larger picture of the whole and the part that each of them is playing in this.
And this is why impact leaders from across the globe came together to design a global network of impact incubators to build Pollinate Impact.
Pollinate Impact is a member-driven network of social impact incubators,
where we aim to create a thriving, resilient, and mutually supportive ecosystem for impact incubators across the global south.
We believe that by empowering, resourcing, and enabling these impact enablers,
we can collectively amplify our ability to solve the biggest problems facing the people and the planet.
Pollinate Impact is an avenue for impact incubators to connect, collaborate, and co-create a bigger impact.
In essence, we celebrate the pollination of impact.
This network has been co-designed by a group of social impact leaders, representing incubators, entrepreneurs, academia, foundations, and networks. One word that comes to mind when you think of Pollinate Impact:
synergy, amplification,
community,
collaboration,
openness.
Join us on this inspiring journey. Together, we will solve the challenges facing people and the planet.
Great, thank you so much, Tassin. And if anyone has any questions, still burning questions, if our speakers have any time, they'll kind of hang out after the session to answer any questions, or have a quick connect with any of you who want to sort of dig a little bit deeper into this. So feel free to hang on for a few minutes if you have any additional questions, and if you have to drop off, that's perfectly okay. But just a huge thanks again to all of our speakers and all of our participants for joining in this conversation, and I hope you all have a wonderful rest of your day if you have to drop off.